Quizás notaste que hace algunas semanas de repente se puso de moda en los medios un nuevo juguete de Apple, un visor de realidad virtual y realidad aumentada. Muchas personas, sobre todo en los Estados Unidos, comenzaron a compartir sus experiencias. Nos mostraron emocionados cómo este dispositivo les permitía aparecer en medio de su sala un dinosaurio. Otros nos mostraban cómo en su solitaria perspectiva aparecían en el aire las aplicaciones que típicamente utilizan en su celular o en su Mac, pudiendo, por ejemplo, navegar en Internet o chatear. Otros más nos compartieron videos de cómo hacían cosas peligrosas como andar por la calle arriesgando su integridad con este visor puesto. En principio, los equipos de realidad virtual tienen unos 10 años en el mercado, pero la gran apuesta a la que se quiere llegar es la realidad aumentada, que básicamente significaría poder utilizar lentes, quizás como estos, que te permitan ver tu realidad objetiva y sobre esta realidad agregar elementos que la enriquezcan y con los que puedas interactuar. Apple ofrece una versión de realidad aumentada todavía con limitantes, empezando por el hecho de que, al menos por lo que entiendo, si tuvieras el visor puesto y estuvieras caminando por la calle y de repente se te acaba la batería, verías prácticamente nada hasta que te quites el visor. Aclaro que esto no significa que la herramienta no ofrezca ventajas. Para mucha gente, por ejemplo, podría llegar a ser el mejor televisor de alta definición que han tenido en la vida. Podría romper la barrera de las 2 dimensiones, permitiendo que los estudiantes comprendan mejor algunos conceptos de física o de química. Un diseñador podría ver y manipular en 3 dimensiones el objeto con el que trabaja. Finalmente, hay otros aspectos de la usabilidad que, aunque aparentemente la gente parece fascinada con ellos recién se pone un visor de este tipo, al tiempo pueden parecer inclusive molestos. ¿A qué me refiero? Típicamente, cuando navegas por internet, escribes en tu teclado, manipulas tu mouse y no necesitas estar cuidando si realmente estos objetos están ahí. Ya sabes que están ahí porque lo sientes. Posicionas, por ejemplo, tus meñiques en las letras A y ñ y puedes teclear sin ver. Con el Vision Pro siempre debes estar mirando exactamente lo que quieres manipular y tus manos deben estar en el campo de visión de la cámara del dispositivo, visibles. Si quieres teclear, tienes que vigilar que realmente pones los dedos donde debes, porque no hay elementos físicos con los cuales guiarte. Pero más allá de este resumen de opiniones que te cuento, decidí entrevistar a una persona que ha trabajado con temas de realidad virtual para tener su perspectiva. Vladimir Obuhov tiene una maestría en ciencias computacionales, se ha especializado en interacción persona-ordenador, gráficos por ordenador y realidad virtual. También ha trabajado en el aspecto del diseño y desarrollo de front-end, transicionó posteriormente al diseño orientado a la experiencia de usuario. En su trabajo académico fue el diseñador líder de un equipo que desarrolló un simulador de realidad virtual donde el usuario conducía un vehículo.
Yeah, thank you, Cynthia, for having me here.
Sobre simplificando cómo funciona la tecnología de realidad virtual, podemos decir que esencialmente se deben transmitir 2 imágenes ligeramente distintas, una a cada uno de nuestros ojos, para que nuestro cerebro interprete esto como un mundo tridimensional con profundidad. Quizás alguna vez utilizaste un Google Cardboard donde típicamente insertamos un celular. En el celular podemos reproducir un video que tiene la pantalla dividida en la mitad, de manera que a cada uno de tus ojos se mande prácticamente la misma escena, pero con un ángulo ligeramente distinto para que, como dije, tengas una señal diferente en cada ojo que tu cerebro reconstruye como un entorno tridimensional. Tengo un video un poco ya viejito en el que hablo un poco más de cómo funciona esto, pero pidámosle a nuestro experto que nos ayude complementando este concepto.
You described exactly what it is, and it sounds simple, and everything about the bigger and more expensive goggles is just built upon the stereoscoping you described perfectly. The biggest interesting thing for the cardboard was that the mobile phones were able to track your head rotation with the gyrometer inside them. So this is basically the cheapest version you can get. And well, from there it's just blowing up in complexity, but basically it's still the same as around 200 years ago or 100 years ago, where people took the images and moved them. And in the last decade, the screens became better and better so that you can hardly see the pixels anymore. 10 years ago, and even 20 or 30, where people started, the cathodic goggles were bigger and big cable and everything. So we are getting smaller, denser, better, but we are still solving the same problems of approachability, usability, and the matter of why do I need it.
¿Y qué pasa con la realidad aumentada? ¿Cómo funciona esta?
As it's in the name, it's augmented reality. So you take your reality and you are enriching it with information. And Google Glass has tried it before with this small demos of you are looking at the Eiffel Tower, and then you're getting the Wikipedia article next to it and explanations described to it. So it's very basic, but it was the first steps of augmented reality. But the difference between virtual reality and augmented reality is that you have to loop through the reality into the actual image, because virtual reality before is basically goggles that are shutting off yourself completely from your, and by introducing more cameras to put it through, you need more computation, more hardware, more flawless communication between them. So yeah, this is what Apple is trying to push. Not only Apple, it's also Meta and everyone. Everyone is in the last 10 years is crazy about this stuff. Meta even renamed themselves to be more in line with the Meta world they tried to establish. But next to the cameras you also need, as I said before, you need the head tracking part, so that if you spin your head, you get a different image, a different area cut out. This is what you actually need in to have it to have immersion. Or you could just strap to your face and just watch TV on. It's just a glorified TV without this interactive elements and trackings.
Entonces, al menos en concepto, hasta cierto punto es algo así como tener el Google Cardboard o el visor de Google de cartón, colocarle cámaras delanteras para que al mismo tiempo puedas ver lo que está viendo el visor. Es decir, el visor hace el trabajo de grabar tu entorno y recrearlo a través del propio sistema.
We need perfectly placed cameras as extension to our viewer. Nintendo 3DS had this feature of having two cameras and making photos of it, with the drawback that you cannot watch and see it on any other device beside the 3DS or with the 3D TV televisions. Xbox had this Kinect that basically used similar things, but just to read out your movement. And this is basically what the Vision Pro and everything does too, by scanning your hands and then recognizing positions and everything. So it's just it's like you would strap your small Nintendo DS under your chin and then have this tracking. And Apple is the one who is, I would say, best equipped for it, because the way they are utilizing the face recognition for unlocking is the same camera technology that is reading out the hand gestures and tracking and everything. So they are kind of already ahead of the curve in this regard.
Entiendo que existen otras tecnologías que se han utilizado también para identificar la profundidad, por ejemplo, el uso de infrarrojo. Recuerdo que en una visita a un museo de ciencias había una cámara de infrarrojo que registraba tu posición relativa y representaba esto en un muro magnético. En todo caso, esta representación del mundo físico y las distancias entre el usuario y otras barreras se debe hacer seguramente con mucha velocidad.
Lightning fast, yes. This is, by the way, the reason why the battery life is catastrophic on these devices. As far as I checked, the Apple Pro thing is 2 hours, and it's a dedicated battery that you have running behind your ear down to your spine. And this is, by the way, one of the issues that were already the main subject of virtual reality while I studied in computer science, the approachability for people. So you cannot give somebody such a big thing with a lot of cables, matrix style, hanging from the ceiling to just experience spinning to spin your head. Where the benefit? So it's difficult to sell somebody something that is monstrously big and shuts off you from your complete perception of reality, because we are still a bit of animals who are hunted. We still have this primitive fear of having the control to see our surroundings and hear our surroundings and everything. So shutting it off, this is one of the biggest problems for me, to see how people use this having in traffic and everything and just moving around. You're perfectly shutting yourself off and making you a soft target or a hard target for anything. One of the other issues is the field of view, right? So basically, I can see contrast until here around. So I would see these kind of movement I can see from my eyes. And if you have only 110 vision, this is what you have with the oh no, this is it was not what. If your view is just this, and this is what you have with the Apple Pro, 110 degree around and to the top also, but it's something that you cannot. It's limiting. It's like having this blinds on the horses so that they don't get distracted, but this is on purpose, and you are giving yourself into it. So this was back then an issue, and is still now a social issue, to get people into kind of secure positions or safety of your own room, to enjoy it without fearing of getting mugged or stolen or robbed.
Entiendo. Limita la experiencia del mundo real que puede tener el usuario aún más que, por ejemplo, un celular que podemos tener en la mano y luego guardarlo, pero aún así conlleva riesgos de seguridad. Entiendo de una conversación previa que tuvimos que además este tipo de dispositivos tienen problemas cuando están enfrente de superficies reflectivas. ¿Me puedes explicar un poco de esto?
Well, it's an interesting question, because I have to back up a bit. So basically, recognizing your surface doesn't need to be in such a high definition as having your pictures taken. So if you have your pictures taken with a 40 megapixel camera, it's enough to have, let's say, 5 megapixel to recognize the depth of your image, because you are actually not seeing it. It's just for reference. Mm-hmm. So this is the baseline, and it works in a frequency that is not visible, because if you would flash one view, let's say in white, and you would take a photo of it, you would see it in the regular picture. So you would kind of have this. You would need to switch back and forth. So they're using infrared. Infrared is not visible by the regular cameras, okay. So they can take actually at the same time, real time, the camera, your environment, and map over it the real stuff. This being said, the thing is, to know your environment, you need to get this thing reflected back to you. So basically, you are for each of the pixels, you are sending one. You're making a flash, and then you are just waiting. Well, this one lit up then, this one lit up a bit later, and by this calculation, you can understand how far away something is in a specific time frame, and then you can map your stuff over it. So if you have a circle, you have the nearest point. Sphere is the nearest point will be the brightest, and then you can map it on it, and then kind of fake this thing around. it's just the technology behind this is not as brilliant as it sounds. It's still the same thing as it's a mathematical problem. So, but back to this one. You cannot get an image, you cannot get a ray that you send back from translucent, highly translucent, and highly reflective surfaces. And it is an issue that has been like since the invention of cameras. You cannot well, you can, but you need a specific filter to photograph something below the water surface. It's the same issue. You cannot see below the water surface. Why can't you see it? Because the light isn't returning to you and you're getting the light reflected from elsewhere. Same issue. Nothing different, but a limitation that needs to be taken care of. So highly reflective and well, glossy and polished metal. Whatever is not returning the light back to you, but refraction and redirecting it to somewhere else is an issue, and always will be, as long as we are relying on light. And we are relying on light because we don't have, well, our ultrasonic senses are not that good to use sound for it. And second, the resolution would be a different one because our eyes are the best developed perception organ. And it would be weird.
Entonces, digamos que estamos un poco atorados en este problema con la tecnología.
Until now, yes. And I mean, if you would just imagine this image, what a computer image would see would have been here a white shoulder, then a bit darker hair. It would be messy because hair is also kind of translucent. It's not a real surface. This is why in computer graphics you can actually always see if hair is done badly. A volume for a computer, but it's just a lot of strings, and
it's kind of inconsistent volume.
Yes,
it doesn't move all together.
and in this one, I would say if this is a flat surface and the white wall has a reflective, we would see there a small gradient of white to black. And maybe, if we are lucky, we can have a 3D perception of the person reflecting in the mirror. So it would be kind of if you clone this person and have a small outcut window, and you could read through it, it's what a computer would see. It wouldn't see the this is a flat mirror. It doesn't have a concept of a mirror. It doesn't have. From them, it's just light traveling and reflecting back. So it wouldn't be a mirror. It would be a window, kind of, because you see it would travel to the mirror, then it would be reflected to the woman back, then it would be reflected from the woman back to the mirror, and then reflected on this extra way is not something that we can compensate for, because we cannot tell the computer, well, this is a mirror.
Entiendo que con el visor de Apple, típicamente en lugar de tener controles, es importante que se reconozca la posición de tus manos, o quizás al menos su contorno y los gestos que haces con ellas. En cambio, hay dispositivos que tienen controles físicos. El uso de estos controles puede ser más preciso porque no depende de una interpretación del sistema, tal cual presionas o mueves. ¿Qué crees que vaya a suceder? ¿Que las empresas conserven este tipo de controles por su precisión o que se siga esta tendencia que está siguiendo Apple?
It's definitely one of the biggest questions in this area, because you have to do a trade-off. Do we want it to be accessible without without expensive hardware, which is a joke, obviously, with the Apple device, because you can kind of own, let's say, 5 or 6 of the cheaper ones for one price of the Apple device. So let's say people would just sit and play video games. They do not want to do it, and unless you have developed a game that is taking your hands as a control. Which, by the way, Microsoft tried with the Kinect, and nobody cared. Nobody wanted to, so they discontinued it, more or less. It was the most best affordable time of flight camera you could have. The Kinect camera was ahead of the time. It was It was better than anything that academia had in this time. And it was blazing fast, and it was amazing, but nobody cared because people wanted to play with the controller. If I want to do sports, I go out and do sports. And then this was the other thing, this awkward running on the place thing. The movement is another different thing regarding immersion. As long as you are sitting still, you do not feel this disconnect of immersion. So for moving, you need space, you need tracking, and you need a corresponding reaction to it. So Apple's camera is just looking for the hands, especially. One of the other competitors is looking for your complete arms and your torso, and they get a suggestion how your feet are standing because it's too far away. I love this thing because it's too far away for them to actually calculate, and it's most of the time not necessary to calculate your whole body. So basically, we are still having the problems of haptics. I mean, there's another example of failed attempts. Is I don't know if your viewer are aware of it, but there was a video game series with Tony Hawk. It is a star skateboarder. She was brilliant, and at some point, around 10 or 12 years ago, they said, "Well, let's do a real life controller to it." So they brought out a board, and the board was basically you could stand on it, you can wiggle on it, you can go like this on it, and to actually show that you are moving, you had to swipe your feet next to infrared cameras, same as now. But at the same time, you needed to take care that you are actually not pushing yourself up, or you would just fall flat on it. So the whole game flopped colossally, and then they moved back to actually controllers. So it depends. I mean, for example, let's say you would use this as replacement for your office, right? So right now you have a physical keyboard. You have this. If you go with the two fingers on F and J, you kind of can type blindly.
Yes, absolutely.
But what if you don't have this? What if they are just hovering somewhere, and you have no limitation on the buttons, you have no idea where they are, and the farther away your hands are, the worse it's tracking. And if you have a glossy interface, or glass table, it's impossible because this technology isn't new. A few years ago, there was a small, and you can still buy it. It's such a small device that is projecting infrared laser keyboard on your desktop, and then by typing on it, it can see which button is hidden. So it's kind of can track if this one is hidden, then it must be this button, and you could actually type on your screen on your table. But the limitations were the same. It is not allowed to be too dark, too bright, too this, too that, and it's just what you need to do. So, and basically it's the same thing as the mouse, for example, is not the most intuitive thing for input, but they won because the alternative was to hold the pen all the time, and it's straining, and the mouse was on the bottom, on just lying on the table. So you have the movement and involvement for a day's work. The same thing is, have you ever tried to, if some of you have ever tried to type on the iPad or any tablet, you know how much trouble it is just to mark one word. What is just a click and a drag on the mouse is here. You don't want to do it, and especially people who tried to it when the keyboard were introduced and got a good connection to it, they complained about this strain on the fingers because you need to type all the time on it's not the same. So this is why Apple basically introduced the mouse back again to the tablets. Yes and no about will we see the hand gestures for the simple, easy things like clicking. I mean, clicking is something that people, and this movement is something that you do on your smartphone for zoom in, zoom out. So basically you're double binding the clicking, and then you need to zoom out like this all of a sudden. Then you need to rotate like this, and you are just, I mean, some people like it to pretend they're wizards in Hogwarts, but to some degree you are just waving your hand around like, well, out of your perspective it makes sense, but everyone else will say, well, yeah, what a weirdo. I mean, just imagine you are sitting in the coffee in Starbucks, sipping on your coffee, and then have to do this for basic stuff, because you cannot do it small and nobody will notice it, because you need some movement, you need some different states of. So basically it will be different for every task. We will need a different tool. And just a simple idea. Imagine you would need to place in the immersion. So immersion is kind of the augmented reality. Your real reality is enriched. And let's say you are watching a video. It's not like you are looking at the. Are you familiar with the movie of A Minority Report?
Yes, of course.
And the user interface back there is, by the way, physical. It's real life. It's not computer generated. It's plexiglass. And he has with three things that are glowing that are connected from a camera. So it's basically, this holds up until now. It's in around 2000, and it's almost 20 years ago, and the user interface there is still one of the best displays ever to hold up the torch, kind of, because it needed to be done this way. So let's say he uses this gesture for forward and back skipping in the movies. So what's the problem? First of all, my camera is tracking this way. It has no idea if my finger is actually visible, because it's tracking from my perspective. So I would need to hold it like this probably, and this is stupid. So you have a lot of limitations for such a simple thing as fast forwarding or backward in a video. And then you need to understand, where do I place it? Do I place it in the air, or are you placing it on the surface to be immersive? Say you cannot place anything on my full table to be immersive, because it's full, and it will never see a flat surface if it's trying to do so. So there are a lot of implications that are more difficult to solve than just making this smaller, more efficient, and you need to have an application that gives you actually more value, anything more than just looking at your small screen in front of you.
¿Se te ocurren casos específicos donde este dispositivo pudiera ser particularmente útil, por ejemplo, en educación?
Obviously, this thing is for especially hardly handicapped people. If you have a confined space, or you cannot move around, if you are, let's say, in a wheelchair or whatsoever. So it can be a beautiful thing to have this world around you. You need to see if it's augmented reality or it's just virtual reality, because for augmented reality you once again need movement for the immersion. And some stuff is, well, if the cost of the rent is going up, then you cannot afford to have a big cinema room, or you cannot afford to have a dedicated room for your office work, and you cannot afford to have 5 different monitors and displays and whatsoever. So at some point it will be a necessary thing, out of necessity of small spaces, to have a virtual placement for work. And then again, the benefits of a bigger screen, of this high resolution screen, let's say I have 4K on each eye. It's a bit like having a 4K on each eye and then still see a small stamp, because you're not using the full screen. You are using a small fraction of it to place it in your screen, in this virtual space. It's not like every of these pixels is used for you to see the written up stuff. It's like I said, it's like having a big screen TV and watching just this much on it. So you are kind of paying for the real estate you are not using most of the time.
Because we actually just read a very small part of the universe that surrounds our eyes.
So if I get a display, I use 100% of the pixels, except of the ones that died. It's in some degree, but I use all of them. So this whole area is kind of in usage all the time. But the other one, since it's giving you one screen and giving you a virtual screen behind it, I recall on one of the Gamescoms, it's a games mess in Cologne in Germany, and they had a PlayStation virtual reality goggles, and they had a small gun, and you could play with it. The interesting part was the resolution was so bad in these things back then that if your enemy, obviously it was a shooter, if your enemy was next to you, you could actually see what it is. But in the distance, you couldn't, because the head was as big as 1 pixel. So it was hard. It was nearly impossible to do, and especially because your kind of the shooting thing was if you're playing a video game, your hair cross is usually your center. But if you are using anything differently, you have to adjust to it. So you could perfectly think that you are aiming at the center, but you weren't. So it was a disconnect between your expectations and what actually happened, because you are looking in the center, and if you move, it's the center of the screen is where your bullet will land then. But if your head is disconnected from it, so you could actually fire in one direction and look in the other. This is the entertainment part, right? Let's go to the more serious and more interesting parts where we will see it, hopefully. There are a lot of things that doesn't make sense for most people, and we cannot explain it. For example, chemistry. Chemistry is a thing that you need to wrap your head around, how the reactions between the molecules and atoms and everything works. And physics, the same thing. You kind of need to draw on a desk and tell them that, well, these are magnetic waves, and you need to imagine that they are like this, but we need to make it flat, right? So there is a lot of application with this, where you can actually explain to somebody if you break the 2D barrier. With the drawback that it's way more expensive to create it, and you need a specialist who knows or is rich enough to give his knowledge to somebody who is an expert in creating 3D assets, then an expert who knows how it has to be navigated. A regular application in and what right now is sold in the industry. Let's say you are creating a tool to train mechanics, because you need to disassemble this motor, and then you need this engine, and you need to see which one is broken, and so that you can describe, and it shows you this one. People think that this view of an explosion, it's explosive view, it's like blown from the middle, is all you need. You can just say, well, float from each other, and then it's just fine. But then it's a circle. It's not grouped. It's not like you disassemble this, and then this one goes in this way, and then you disassemble it once again, because this would need human input. somebody would need to create groups of this units of this, so that can be moved independently and then again disassembled independently. So you need extreme understanding of this. Right now, you get to the people basically 3 views: front, top, and side view, and then they have to do it in their head. But if you want to visualize it for everyone, you need to do this work beforehand. And it's not as easy as it sounds. This is why the written word is still the easiest to create media for. Thank God for videos, obviously, or we wouldn't be talking like this. The accessibility of creating videos is also easier.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like 15 years ago, it would be a massive massive amount of work to even set up what we are doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
We are still in the beginning of creation of assets and media. And I mean, there are some people who understand mathematics, for example, better because they have a 3D view in their head how the numbers are connected. It's just a defect maybe compared to everyone else, and people suffering from it because they kind of see everything in a different way. But their view is what could help uplift many people to the next level of understanding mathematics. But it needs to be communicated, created, distributed, and it's a hell of an assignment and hell of a task, because right now every educational institute is underfunded, and many teachers are overworked, have no possibility of no formal training after some degree with the new technology. The newest technology in schools is so old that it is basically rotting most of the time. It's not just dead; it's already rotting. So it will be a tough thing. But the biggest probability and opportunity in this one is obviously you don't need to come together for school, for example, but you need to have this. So in my small mind right now is you will get the table for your child. A table will have some markers on them so that you are not relying on visual cues and glossy surface whatsoever. So this is why some 3D, some virtual reality are using QR codes to actually see this. So because 3 points, and then you have an kind of the surface. Or right now they're using small cubes with different QR codes, so that you are looking at something and then it's replaced, so you can rotate it. There are applications already for it, but it's not mainstream. It's just not feasible, because you can easily buy one TV and put it together, use it together. But with this device, everyone needs to have their own. And let's not start about the eye correction stuff, about glass wearing people who are forced on top of the glasses to wear another pair, or to buy extremely expensive prescription lenses to put them in, which they need to remove again if somebody else is trying to use it. So I think the most important thing will be disabled people will be able to work. They will get a possibility to work, because it will be easier. If you cannot move, you can still kind of move a robotic purpose device to sort stuff out, or just to supervise their decisions. And obviously the games industry will be in it, but they have a lot of problems to solve before it's feasible and before it's even useful in any meaningful way, because people are still rejecting this.
There are a couple of things in that area. One, I would say, well, at least a couple of things. One is that we sort of like to play with other people. That's why Nintendo's and these old video games.
We are social, yes.
We could play with the same TV screen and share and stuff, and we don't have that possibility with this type of goggles. And on the other hand, well, if you are flying some sort of virtual reality plane or a car, I mean, if you are sitting inside of a cockpit, a sort of controlled environment, then this can actually work, right? But if you need to run around your living room, that's going to be messy.
It won't. It's not just messy. It's more or less impossible. This is why the one approach that that some people do is you create a contraption for the person that has a belt where it holds your belt area, and below you is a moving rubber band, more or less. So if you run in one direction, it accelerates in a different area. But again, you need a complete room for it to be just running in it. It looks fun, and it will be exercise. But then we need you need again a too specialized place. It's not smaller confined places we are moving into right now. And back to your flight simulator example, the more complex your input is, I mean, like, the more you have like real grips you need to do for training, for example, in these areas. You cannot have virtual dials and grips and stuff. You need to have them physically next to you, because it's in you are trained for the stress situation. In a stress situation, you need to have a physically, the distance needs to be exactly the same. You have to act without thinking. And this is where virtual reality will fail. Immersion is always has a price.
Por lo que entiendo hasta ahora, hay todavía muchos aspectos que hace falta refinar con este tipo de tecnología, pero ojalá que nos toque ver el desarrollo de aplicaciones que le saquen el provecho máximo a esta herramienta. Ojalá también que en el futuro nos puedas acompañar de nuevo para responder preguntas de seguimiento de parte del público. Muchísimas gracias por tu colaboración.
Glad to be part of this.
Suscríbete al canal y comparte nuestro material. Si quieres aprender sobre conservadores alimenticios, puedes ver también este otro video. Recuerda que puedes apoyar la creación de contenido con pequeñas donaciones como lo hacen ellos. Muchas gracias.